welcome to a reading vlog. I thought I'd kick one off because I have been flat chat non-stop this morning. It is Monday, I have the day off work thankfully, and I don't know if I really caught you up properly in my previous Magical Readathon vlog because obviously my focus was a bit divided, but you would have noticed that Dave is injured. So he tore his Achilles tendon and he tore it 2 weeks before our wedding, and so after our wedding at the end of April he then had surgery on it and he's been kind of in recovery and couch-bound and housebound since. And it's going to be a little bit longer until he actually can bear weight on the leg. So that means I'm going to be working from home for a little bit. So hopefully I can still listen to audiobooks and stuff while I'm pottering around the house and doing chores and stuff. I didn't listen to audiobooks today just because I kind of had a single-minded focus on getting everything done by the afternoon so I can actually sit down and I just have the mopping left to go. So that is really a snapshot of an update on our situation at the moment, but I am also currently reading some things and I would like to get them done and dusted, hopefully before June. The main thing that I want to get read is the Jen Lyons book that you've probably heard me banging on about a lot recently, which is my current reread so that I can then jump into the third book, The Memory of Souls. This one I've got 6 hours left of the audiobook, and then I'm also currently reading The Malevolent Seven by Sebastian de Castell, and it's got 4 hours left of the audiobook. It's about Cade, and he is a mercenary and he's with a group of mercenaries, and he's not a good guy. The narrator, which is Cade, has said that several times already, and I'm not loving it as much as Spellslinger or Traitor's Blade just because I need that character to have this sense of ideology of I am a hero but not overwhelmingly so. Like, I'm not a, you know, gung-ho hero who is going to save the world. It's a I am doing the best that I can and I'm a morally good person. The character in The Malevolent Seven is not a morally good person. And so I think that might be the character's journey. So obviously I'm going to stick to it because I like the writing and I like the world and the magic that has been built up so far. It seems like the magical characters in this world need to do kinds of deals with demons or demonic folk in order to get their magic, or some people do, not everybody. So the main character obviously is doing deals with demons and he gets these tattoos and he has to trace these tattoos to perform these magic spells, and they're finite. So he has to keep doing multiple deals to get more tattoos and more magic. So already that's intriguing to me and I'm looking forward to seeing where those ties go, where the journey of the story is going, because I've kind of only just gotten to the premise so far, but I'm liking it enough and I'm going to eagerly continue and hopefully finish it soon. So those are my two main reads, the two audiobooks, but then my library was like, hello, I have everything that you have put on hold, because I put everything off until after the wedding, and now after the wedding is now, and all of my library books are like, hello, I am ready. So I keep kind of deflecting them. But the main thing that I borrowed is The Other Merlin, which I think is, obviously it's an Arthurian legend based rom-com, but it's a queer rom-com between two men, I think, and it's got magic woven in somehow. It's supposed to be fun, so I'm looking forward to trying it out. That also is an audiobook though, and I'm like, I have so many audiobooks to read right now. And then my friend texted me and she's like, hi, if you want to borrow this, it is also available, and it's The Sun and the Star by Rick Riordan, which is his new Nico D'Angelo standalone book in the Percy Jackson world. And I'm like, I am so spoiled for choice right now. I am so lucky but also so overwhelmed. So I'm gonna try and get to all of those, which is why I decided in my last Magical Readathon vlog to park a few things instead of continue on with reading them, because I do not have time, because I also want to reread the rest of the Dark Shade of Magic books before October. If I keep putting it off, then I'm not going to be able to make time for it. So maybe you'll see those in this vlog as well. Who knows at this point? It's been a few days since I updated you last, and I do remember why I gave this book a 4 stars instead of a 4.5 or a 5 on my initial read through. I've got 2 hours of the audiobook left, but because certain events are just kind of drawn out, it's made me lose a little bit of interest. I don't love Janelle in this as much as I love Kieran in the first book. I prefer him as a protagonist, and while he is involved in this book, it's not as direct as the first book when it's mainly his story and perspective. A lot of ground in here is rehashed, but in a new and invigorating way, but sometimes when it's rehashed, the events just take a bit longer because they've got additional perspectives. So sometimes that can be really, like I said, invigorating and interesting, but other times I'm like, can we just get on with it, please? Plus there's a lot of lore and world building that I've already heard before, and I am benefiting from hearing again, but as soon as I hear it again, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this, I know this now, let's pick up the pace and move on a little bit. So while I am enjoying it, it's a little bit of work for me to get through this one. And it's kind of like the hurdle for me to get over in this vlog so that I can start reading more of the Malevolent Seven. Although I now have a receding deadline on my library book, The Other Merlin. So maybe I should read that one next and wait for my new release. I mean, I own that, it's on Audible, so I don't need to get to that under any kind of deadline. So I probably should try the audiobook that I've got out at the library and see if I like it, because then I'm gonna have an 11-hour audiobook to read. I do listen at double speed, so you know, not technically 11 hours, but still over 5 hours is a lot of time. So I need to prioritize, and I would do that tonight. However, I'm just starting up again with our exercise class twice a week, and that means that I can't settle tonight. I have to eat a very small and quick dinner and then get ready and go out to exercise. So I'm like, I just want to be cozy on the couch and read, but I can't. Despite the fact that I thought yesterday I was not going to finish The Name of All Things, I had time before I ended up going out to exercise. So I finished this early this morning. I had 20 minutes left of it, and I just quickly finished it before I logged on to work from home, and I gave it 4 stars for the reasons that I said earlier. I do obviously like Kieran the most, given that he was introduced at the beginning of the story, so I'm kind of more attached to him, but the end of this book was quite quick in all of its delivery of what it was kind of promising in a very roundabout and drawn out way throughout the story. So the ending is always the most exciting part, obviously. It was easy to get through the finish line, but to lead up to that point I had to push sometimes. So I have eagerly now started, and I'm 30 pages into this book, which I didn't think I would start until June. So I'm pretty happy at the moment that I've even begun this behemoth of a book. It is already going back to characters that I love, and there is a trio that I'm quite enamored by, so I'm looking forward to their journey. I'm sorry if you can hear the cockatoos outside. I don't know what party they're throwing out there, but they are loud. It's kind of like living with pterodactyls. Anyway, this book is the 3rd in a series, so I can really only say that there is Valkoroth, which is kind of like the big bad guy that has been locked away for a very long time, and there are cornerstones and dragons. There are our main characters, but there are also gods, like gods of the afterlife and of magic and of luck, and these gods can kind of interact with and influence reincarnation, which is why I kind of had to pay a lot of attention in the past, because some characters had children that were at war, and then those children that were then reincarnated as the enemy's children. So it's convoluted, but in a clever way, which is why I'm giving it the time of day. And this is really about characters fighting off the big bad guy, essentially using magical items and fighting against prophecies when there is a wizard trying to enact all of the prophecies, because he believes that it's going to stop the world from ending, whereas he might not be right. And he just believes that everything will turn out the way the prophecies turn out. So he's had a long time to kind of put all of his pieces in place, a lot of these pieces being people, and that's what these characters are fighting against, because some of these characters have been the pieces in his games. So it's interesting to see how all of the mechanisms play out, and I think we're getting further into developing these inter-character relationships amongst all of this plotting that's going on, which is something I'm really excited to hear more about in this book, because I feel like the first 2 books kind of rehashed the beginning of the timeline, and now we are fully into a new era of content, and I'm really here for it, which is why I've already read 30 pages, even though it's a very long book. All of that said about the Chorus of Dragons series though, I did start The Other Merlin, which was the library book that came in for me, also on audio, and I've immediately put it down. I got 4% into it, and I realized that it is a Arthurian legend, almost modern day retelling, I suppose, and the character of Merlin is actually a woman. Her name is Emrys, and so I'm not as interested in it because it doesn't match my initial perception of the book. So it's nothing wrong with the book, but it's just not what I would have picked it up for. Obviously it's adjacent to what I thought it was. So in a roundabout way, that is me saying I have DNF'd it, even though it's not a bad book by any means. It's just got characters that are 18 and I thought they were in their 20s, and I thought it was queer and it's not. So there's a few moving parts, and I'm also very picky with Arthurian legend stories because I loved the Merlin show when I was growing up, and that has really influenced how much I adore Merlin. So whenever I see any other kind of media approaching Merlin, I'm like, please be good. I'm very subjective as to what I take on board, and this was not one of them, even though it's pretty highly rated on Goodreads. I think it's like a 4.3 or something, so it's probably a good book, but it's not a book that I really want to read. So Thankfully, I've put that down and my audiobook quota has gone down significantly, because that is 11 hours of my time that I don't need to spend reading that. And so I've done a little bit more reading of The Malevolent Seven. I now have, I think, 3.5 hours left. So I'm pretty much pummeling through that book because it's not very long anyway. And I'm kind of getting the vibe of this is Falkio adjacent. So in the Trader's Blade books, Falkio was this very ideological character who was kind of like the woe is me hero, and he always wanted to do the good thing, whereas the character of Cade in The Malevolent Seven is this guy who has done terrible things and he wants to maintain the fact that he's not a good person, and so he's kind of self-punishing for that, and he wants proof that he is a bad person. And so I'm like, you know that you're worth more, right? Like, can you just have that revelation so we can push further along with your story? So I think I'm getting a little bit caught up in being frustrated by him, but I like the narration tone and I love the audiobook narration of Joe Jameson, so it's making it enjoyable. Plus the plot that they're on is intriguing to me. They have just come across a rat mage. So I'm looking forward to seeing how everything progresses in this one as well, although I'm not really sold on the angels mechanic when it comes to magic. When there are demons, which is, you know, in Chorus of Dragons, when there are demons, there are usually angels, but I have not really encountered angels. There have been godly forces and stuff in this, but it's been at a level where I can enjoy it, whereas in The Malevolent Seven, there was an angel in it because there's demons in it as well. And I'm not as sold on angels in that book as I am in general. Again, it's another thing like the Arthurian legends that I'm really picky about. It has to be done right. So I'm probably sitting on 4 stars for The Malevolent Seven, and I wish it was 5, but maybe the ending will change my mind. Guess what finally arrived in the mail? My copy of The Malevolent Seven, which coincidentally I have now finished. I gave this overall a 4 stars, and I can't help comparing it to the Greatcoat series just because I love Greatcoats so much. And I'm comparing it because the way that Cade is written in this book and the way that Falkio is written in the Greatcoat series have a lot of obvious parallels, obviously because Sebastian de Castell wrote both of them, but I feel like he took the formula of Falkio and modified it very much for Cade. And Cade, like I said earlier in this vlog, is not a good character. And I mean that in the sense that he's not morally good, and that upward hill battle of him trying to fight for good things helps shift his character a little bit. And so it seemed a bit disparaging to have him constantly reiterating that he's not a good person, but then wanting to save people who are in trouble. Some parts just didn't quite match up properly for me, and I found that the cast of characters in the Greatcoat series had a lot more emotional cohesion, but in this book the 7 characters that we have combined together as like an unlikely crew going to do a thing. Usually I love that formula and I did enjoy it here. I only really like the connection between Cade and Corrigan because that felt the most fleshed out, even though there were moments where the other characters in here got to have their time. So it just felt more natural and genuine with Corrigan. There were also a few moments, like 1 or 2, where the jokes were very specific and they absolutely didn't land for me, and one of those was right at the end and it kind of soured some of the ending for me, and I was like, why would you do that? So overall, like I said, it's a 4 stars because while some things tripped me up and soured me a little towards the ending, the plot overall was intriguing, pieces of it surprised me and grossed me out, which is great because you want a reaction. So I did like this book, but I wanted to love it, so it is a bit disappointing to me, but it's still a great book, which is why I gave it 4. So overall, I'm just glad that I could finish this during the week, and I've also made progress on Memory of Souls. I'm now 255 pages into this behemoth of a book, and it's not even June yet, so I am pushing far ahead of my June TBR, at least at the moment. You know, check in with me in another week and maybe that will change. But for the moment, I'm really loving this, and the first 2 books in this series kind of combine and rehash similar events from different perspectives with different motivations in mind. And so it's nice to have all of that kind of said and done, because now we are in a different section of the story and it feels so much more involved and fleshed out with different perspectives and different characters, and it's cool to see all of the politics and all of the name dropping that has happened in the first 2 books come to a head so much more in this one. it feels like it's done the time in terms of building all the foundation, and while most of that time was enjoyable, like I said, I did have to push through the first 2/3 of the second book, so I'm super excited to read more of this. I keep thinking about it when I'm not reading it, and I'm really enjoying it. It is also progressing the almost but not quite love triangle between characters, and I have a feeling this love triangle is going to turn poly, which is why I'm putting up with it, because otherwise I hate love triangles, but there have been so many queer characters and queer side characters in this that I have a lot of hope. So I'm looking forward to obviously continuing this one. Maybe I'll end up finishing it before June, who knows. But that is the end of this reading vlog at least. Come and chat to me down below in the comments. Let me know how many books you are planning to read during June, because I have a very ambitious TBR. But thank you so much for watching this video. I'll come chat to you down below in the comments, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.